What up? Golden Era podcast here on YouTube. We are recording this now 20 games just about, give or take, depending on the organization, into the 2033-34 NBA season. A lot of the teams that we expected to be here are, a lot of them that we might have expected to not be here are not. But we'll start as we always do with Golden State. Look, we talked a lot of negatives about Golden State, right? Oh, they don't have enough depth. They can't get it done when they need to. Their 3 stars are great, but what happens if one of them gets hurt? All that's still true, but the fact remains this is still a team that's sitting now a half game behind the Oklahoma City Thunder for the number 1 spot in the Western Conference and in range of the top record in the NBA. This is still a really good basketball team, and truthfully, while their depth isn't quite what it was a year ago with Shane Ruffin and Alfonso Harrell there, this is still an extremely good basketball team because of their 3 stars, Javon Roll, Jonathan Kuminga, Deontay Dixon. But one of the things that they've done recently, and we want to dive into some of those positives and how they've found ways to actually make some of their bench pieces better, they've actually been able to do a lot of good things, particularly with the inverse pick and roll. We've been seeing them go to that with Deontay Dixon and Jonathan Kuminga with the ball, and then having guys, Javon Roll, Jalen House, Keon Granger, Jaheim Briggs as the pick man, as a screen man, and rather than just doing a straight up pick and roll, rather doing a pick and pop. And what we've seen is this has created this hyper mismatch for Golden State. There is probably not, and it's not that they've never gone to this, right? They have, but they've really unleashed their athletes, Deontay Dixon and Jonathan Kuminga, by doing this. There's no debate. These probably are the best athletic forward combo in the NBA, and it puts the defense in the most unpredictable situation. What we've seen so far is a lot of defenses just both of them kind of crashing, right? The defender of both the ball handle and the screen man have both been fading to either Kuminga or Dixon, which has left Javon Roll, who's a 40% career three-point shooter, wide open above the arc. It's left Jalen House, who's proving to be a reliable three-point shooter, wide open. It's part of what's kind of reinvigorated Keon Granger. We talk about Granger being like this poster child of the Warriors' struggles, right? He's shooting well below his career averages. If you look at him and you subtract opening night, he's actually a 45% shooter from deep this season. He's 0 of 6 on opening night, 45% since. What does that tell us? 2 things. Keon Granger has been shooting the ball well. This is very small sample size, even 20 games in, a quarter of the way in. But it's small sample size because he just doesn't have a ton of usage. It's not like he's putting out 5-6 three-point attempts per game. We haven't actually seen him get to that mark very often outside of opening night. So he's really been unlocked in this way because he's not now running off of screens, trying to get open off ball. He's able to be involved in the action right away. Now, that has helped not only Keon Granger, but also Jalen House. House kind of had an up and down first 2 months of the season, first 20 games of this regular season. He's found a rhythm in that, and he's being utilized in a way now for Golden State that allows them to have these other options where it's not just 15 to 20 shots per game for their star 3 players. There should be some adjustments, right? There should be some pieces that they should, from a defensive standpoint that start to make that adjustment. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a lot more switches on that, right? Or try to shoot that off ball, that screen man with another defender and try to, rotate through it. The challenge for Golden State, or at least defending Golden State, is if you switch that, now you've got a guard on Deontay Dixon. Dixon is winning that battle 9 times out of 10, depending on the guard. I mean, we haven't seen them run this with like a Cade Cunningham, but that's really the only way you stop that, with a really big physical guard guarding Javon Roll. There's not a lot of those at the point guard position in the NBA, although the position is extremely deep. So how this kind of the updates or the adjustments that teams make, I think the Warriors have a lot of these wrinkles answered, and it's a big part of why they sit right now second place in the Western Conference. And we talk about what could they make a move. This is, a little piece of action that we haven't quite, talked too much about, but Golden State does own the Mavs first round pick this season. They got that in the Evan Mobley 5-team mega trade a couple seasons ago. Now that pick has some unique protections on it. It's top 10 protected this season from Dallas. And they have, as part of that deal, they also got the 2036 first round pick, which was also top 10 protected. Those protections kind of work hand in hand. If it doesn't convey this season, then the 2036 becomes completely unprotected, plus the Warriors would get 3 second-round picks from Dallas. So I wouldn't expect that the way Dallas has been playing. They're probably a guarantee to finish in the top 10 because essentially that's going to be the teams that aren't fighting for the play-in. Dallas is not fighting for the play-in right now. So Warriors unlikely to get that, but they do have then the 2036 first-round pick they could dangle in a trade if they did want to try to go out and get somebody. They don't have a lot of salary matching. If they tried to go out and get a veteran, they'd be looking from the scrap heap, kind of lower-level players anyway. Do they choose to do that, or do they think that they can continue to make these improvements? I wouldn't be surprised if they stand pat. If they stand pat and say, look, we know that there's a lot of risk involved here. We've won 3 straight championships. We trust our guys to be able to get it done at the end of the season. Yeah, these speed bumps that we've gotten from the young players, not ideal, but we've still got a really great roster. And the other big piece of news I wanted to touch on, Raptors Pelicans, man. Raptors are acquiring Shane Ruffin from New Orleans. They got the Pelicans got Shane Ruffin, of course, in that deal on draft night with Golden State. Simple question: what is New Orleans doing, man? They've essentially swapped the pick that became Jalen House, who we've talked about being a really good three-point shooter, for Toronto's 2038 first. That's not a good deal. Toronto, that's 5 years away. That's 4 drafts away. But it's reasonable to believe that the Toronto Raptors, now with Jalen Justice, Shane Ruffin, Terrence Clark, and Ezekiel Marrell, let's assume they keep those for 4 years. No telling if they do. But they're still probably going to be a decent team. So what that pick ends up being is probably in a similar range, if not a little bit worse. I just think they went too far in too soon, right? This offseason, they go out, they make the deal for Shane Ruffin, they sign Alfonso Harrell from Golden State. They basically take key pieces of the Warriors championship team and add it to theirs. But they didn't need to. They overreacted to what was a really good run last season, sure, but they were the 10 seed. It wasn't as if this was a 7 seed flirting with, avoiding the play-in. They shouldn't have even been in the play-in. We've talked a lot about the great part of the play-in tournament is that it allows teams that were previously out of it to actually be involved come the playoff stretch. The opposite side to that coin is it can give some teams a false sense of readiness, and in this case, New Orleans is a prime victim of that. I'd expect them to deal Alfonso Harrell if they've already moved off of Shane Ruffin. Let Tariq Wheeler, who's had, surprisingly his minutes kind of falling off this season by about 5 per game, let him back in there and embrace the youth. This team no doubt would have been better with Jalen House on it rather than Shane Ruffin for 20 games. But let this youth movement be in existence. Ty Outlaw's only 3 years pro, man. This is not a team that's on the verge of needing to compete right away. That being said, there's some concerns. Raison Adels, the number 3 pick 2 seasons ago in 2032, he hasn't really been the offensive force that they were hoping from him. Baron Hunter has been really struggling to see the floor. They took him in the top 5 this past season. But I'd expect even more change coming. I'd expect Alfonso Harrell out. I wouldn't be surprised if they tried to move Cameron Kabongo out of this roster, free up even more forward minutes for both Adels and Hunter. This team was fun last year. And their run, they pushed the Warriors to 5 games. Ty Outlaw was incredible. It was great. But it wasn't a sign that things were changing or that contention was on the horizon, and they just miscalculated that. I think they revigorate this. They've got a lot of young pieces. Andre Schlorbeck looks to be a really good piece next to Ty Outlaw. Find another one. The top of this draft class is phenomenal with D.D. McDyess and Javon Boston that you could add to that backcourt wing kind of triplets. There's no reason for New Orleans to start panicking and worrying about the future when their star isn't even on his second contract in the NBA. All right, we're back. A couple broadcast games coming up here in the next couple days. So appreciate you tuning in. Again, always make sure you tune in over on Operation Sports. A lot of exclusive written content dropping there as well. Great chance to kind of dive deeper into the universe and see all the various pieces that are going on. But for now, we'll talk to you one-ish week from now.